Hello! Welcome back to the Rotten Horror Picture Show, the only horror movie podcast that begins every episode with a Baudelaire quote. My name is...
Followed by a threat.
Yes. My name is Clay, and with me as always is Amanda. Amanda, how are you doing?
I'm good. I'm ready to unwrap some candy.
You had a hot take about Advent calendar. We're talking about our Christmas film for this year, our final film of the year of 2024, year of our Lord, is the Advent calendar from 2021. And you have thoughts about the concept of not the movie, but the actual item.
Well, I was just saying before we started that usually they're bullshit. Not always, but usually.
In terms of
the
what
candy,
is inside.
Yeah,
they're too small. It's
right.
like, what are you really going to get out of that?
Right. So, like, if you buy a really nice one from, like, a fancy chocolate place, they're great. You're getting, like, a high-quality thing. But if you're just getting a thing where it's, like, one Hershey Kiss in every little pocket, it's like, what?
Well, what if you got the use of your legs back?
I mean, that's different.
Yeah.
I feel like we're in a different realm at that point in terms.
That's the Advent calendar. That's what we're talking about.
So.
You know what occurred to me the other day?
What occurred to you the other day?
You know the song, The 12 Days of Christmas?
Yes.
Is everything in that song a bird?
No, 5 golden rings.
I think those are all slang terms for birds.
I disagree.
Why would it be 7 birds and then 3 random other or 6 random other things?
Yeah. I don't 5 golden rings sounds like golden rings though.
I looked it up. I'm not the only
okay.
I'm not the only person who shares this theory. I believe it's not entirely possible to prove definitely.
Well, yeah, cuz birds aren't real.
Aside from that. And gold is a manufacturer of the state. But
this is a conspiracy podcast now.
Now we're talking. I feel like it's one of those things where when the original song was written, which I don't know when that was, I'm assuming it was yonder back.
It was probably like
many moons ago.
1964.
Okay, now I'm looking it up.
No, it's older than that. I'm sure it's older than that, but
when
I had to be facetious, and now you're calling my bluff, and I don't appreciate
days
it.
Of Christmas written. Inconclusive.
Glad we stopped the intro to the podcast for this.
Published in 1780.
Fine.
So it's a long time ago.
Yeah.
It seems strange to me that it would be so bird focused.
You can eat birds.
Right. But doesn't it then make sense that everything that you're giving you're getting from your loved one is a bird? Because like, what are you going to do with 12 maids of milk? You get like actual 12 women.
I forgot that
cows.
was 12.
Is it 12? I don't know. It's one of them.
Like 8 maids of milking?
It's probably more reasonable, but just by very little. Huh. So, but you know what I mean? Like, do you need pipers piping while you're cooking your 11 or 12 partridges and pear tree?
You're too focused on
it feels to me like one of those things where at the time everybody knew everything was birds, but as time has gone on, that slang has fallen by the wayside.
Well, this week's movie is the Advent calendar.
Yes, it is. Hold on a second. The Advent calendar from 2021. I think they're all birds. Anyway, this is not on our list, but it has an 80% Rotten Tomato score with a 64% audience score. Had you seen this before?
No, I'd never even heard of it.
Yes, I came across this, I guess when it came out in 2021, it was on Shudder. Mm-hmm. And I can't remember if it was recommended to me or if it just popped up on Shudder and I gave it a watch. And I was
I think it's back on Shudder right now.
Oh, good.
Actually, yeah.
Well, I'm glad we wasted money renting it. I was very surprised by it. It was one of those ones where I went into it not knowing anything about it and came away thinking, that's pretty good.
Yeah, which is a rare experience these days.
Especially I love Shudder. I love the modern conveniences of streaming. Mm-hmm. But it's rare that you go into a streaming movie sight unseen.
Yes, that you've never heard of before.
Not to say that this was, it was, I don't know if this was in the theater. I don't know. It was 2021 coming out of the pandemic.
It's a Belgian movie.
Ooh.
Isn't it?
Sure.
All of the title cards and stuff are Belgian.
Sure.
So
yeah, makes
also
sense.
appropriate chocolate.
Yeah, it's easy to get to Germany from there, kind of.
It's a long drive, actually. When she was talking about she had to drive to Berlin, that's a really far distance.
Well,
Like Belgium.
that's what she was willing to do for her friend that she crippled. So we will take a quick break, play you the trailer, which I'm sure will be entirely in French and not a help to anyone who can't speak French. And we will be back in a second.
Si vous regardez ceci, c'est que vous avez reçu un calendrier de l'Avent. Respectez les règles. Surprise! Qu'est-ce que tu fais là? Joyeux anniversaire. Un calendrier de l'Avent? Respecte toutes les règles jusqu'à l'ouverture de la dernière fenêtre, sinon je te tue. Attention! T'en avales un, faut les avaler tous. Jésus dit au paralytique, lève-toi et marche. Tu devrais arrêter avec ce calendrier, ça va te rendre dingue. Tu prends bien tes médocs contre tes hallucinations, tout ça? Je marche. Je marche.
Bon anniversaire.
Tu devrais arrêter d'avaler toutes ces saloperies là.
Ton calendrier va exiger d'autres sacrifices. D'autres personnes vont devoir mourir.
Cette nuit, tu me fous la paix.
Okay, the Advent Calendar, directed by Patrick Ridremont. So far, his only movie. He directed 2 shorts, and he's done a bunch of acting. But this is the only feature film so far that he has directed. Written by Patrick Ridremont, starring Eugenie. This is going to be fun.
Almost as difficult as the Japanese names.
No, nothing is as difficult as that. Eugenie Durand, Honorine
That name called your bluff.
Honorine Magnier, Clement Olivieri, Janice Abrich.
Everyone who speaks French is cringing right now.
Great. You know what? If I just want a reaction out of people. It's
You're a shock jock is what you're saying.
Yeah, like Jesus once said. Love me or hate me. It's the lukewarm people that I don't want anything to do with.
Fair.
That's a direct quote.
Please continue.
Olivier Bonjour, which is a fun name. Jean-Francois Girard, and I was gonna ask you if you knew the dog's name because I forgot to write it in. So a dog named, what was the dog's name?
Marvin.
Dog named Marvin. Amanda.
Of course I know the dog's name.
What happens in Le Calendar de Advent?
Ooh. When Ava receives an antique wooden advent calendar, it seems at first that it only guarantees a countdown to Christmas filled with sweets. However, with the calendar comes a set of rules and the promise of wish fulfillment for those who follow them. Yes.
Does it actively promise that? I guess it does.
I think if as you start to go into it, you start to realize what's happening, as Ava does. Well, Clay, some things you'll find in the advent calendar include the shallow end of the pool.
Would you like to explain that joke?
Because the guy who hits on her is only hitting on her because she's pretty. It's shallow.
Well, I mean, he hadn't met her yet. What else is he going to go by?
I don't know, the fact that they both like to swim.
That's step 2. I'm sorry, not step 2 in this case.
Yeah, yikes. Bare feet in a shared office.
Honestly, the worst thing that happens to her in this movie.
Yeah, the most horrifying thing.
Ugh.
A half chick on wheels.
Yeah.
That's a rough thing to say to somebody. The quintessential evil stepmother.
Yes. Yep. She right out of a fairy tale, that one.
And the lipstick and everything. An ADA compliant conspiracy wall/table.
Yes. Why do they always ruin the surfaces in these things?
Because you're so
It's always
upset or confused or taken aback by what's happening in your life, that all of the normal rules of society have to go out the window.
But
so
she
start writing on your surfaces.
But she wrote things on sticky notes.
Yes.
That she then put onto the table.
She permanent marked
onto the table.
Yes.
Technically, it could be a dry erase. We don't know.
Maybe that was it. Pyramid Head's little brother.
Sure.
It's a monster from Resident Evil. For all you people who aren't nerdy enough.
I'm sorry. I was out playing sports when that game came out.
Loser. Dog murder or dog murder.
Yes.
They're
both.
It's too bad. Sacrilegious dirty talk.
Yeah. When did that happen?
when the friend Sophie asks the new boyfriend about his baby Jesus.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
That one didn't hit for you? You didn't notice?
Jesus and his 2 apostles.
Literal Christ on a cracker.
Yeah.
And the true meaning of Christmas, sacrificing everyone in your life to a German demon for fun and profit.
Mm-hmm.
And last but not least, the best parenting, or at least the most self-sacrificing parenting.
I mean, it is. He does give her the response that I think a lot of parents would like to give their kids, which is just shoot me in the face.
But it
can't stand this woman anymore.
It's a very poignant, like,
it is. Yes,
if this will heal you, I would rather, I would rather die and go be with your mother, and then you will have your legs back.
Yeah, I thought that those scenes were very good.
Yes.
Especially the one where he wakes up. I thought was very good.
Yeah.
That's probably the most powerful scene in the movie.
Yeah, in terms of the emotional connection, I agree.
But yes, so we have the Advent Calendar, which is a horror movie based around a holiday game. I don't really know what you would call it. Tradition.
Yeah.
Only it's not your. In 1985, this would have just been a slasher where the guy leaves candy behind or something stuffed into eyeball sockets.
Yes, it carved the number of the day into somebody's chest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But here we have what I thought. I came away from this movie really surprised at how clever it was.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that really got me the first time was I didn't know moment to moment what was going to happen.
Yeah.
And on rewatch, it didn't have quite the same effect. I still liked it. I still thought it was pretty effective.
Mm-hmm.
But I think I watched this. This was one of those ones I think I watched by myself late at night. And it just, I thought it worked. You kind of think you know where it's going, and then it kind of takes a left turn.
Yep.
And then it takes a right turn, and you're paralyzed. And then your dog gets eaten or whatever. And it's, anyway.
Your dog eats a man, and you have to kill the dog. And
What did you think?
I agree. I spent the first third of this movie not being sure if it was going to be my cup of tea, because I worried that it was going to turn into, how can we torment this paraplegic woman?
Mm-hmm. Well, you got to make sure she really wants her legs back.
Right. You got to make sure that her life is miserable and she is miserable in it and is just barely clinging to sanity.
Yeah.
But I did worry, like you said, back in 1985, this would have just been a movie about a monster that comes for the 24 days before Christmas and kills people. So I was a little bit worried it was going to be that.
I mean, it sounds pretty good when you say it that way. I have to write that one down.
But I was worried it was just going to be a series of escalating situations in which Ava is abused and mistreated, and it was going to kind of culminate in her having to, use her wits and her wiliness to escape the monster that's chasing her through the park or whatever, and she's in a wheelchair. So I was pleasantly surprised when about 1/3 into this movie, things started to pivot.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh, okay, this monster is more morally gray than it seems on the surface, and she has a lot more agency in the situation than it initially seems.
Yeah, I think the danger with something like this, especially in the modern era, especially, honestly, a French movie or a Belgian movie, modern French horror movies tend to be pretty rough.
I mean, it's called French extremism.
Yes.
So, yeah.
So, like, there is an alternate version of this movie somewhere in the multiverse that is just
people's
real
eyeballs
rough.
getting pulled out and wrapped in little clear, like, colorful plastic.
Oh, I
and
mean,
fed to
yeah, you
people.
pull a person's eyeballs and you leave that in the Advent.
Yeah,
That's pretty
yeah.
good. That's not bad right there.
Yeah, you have to put a finger in the next box, and then
Oh.
yeah, you just have to keep giving up body parts.
Sounds like a great movie.
It's just a very different movie than the one we
Right.
watched. Yes.
So yeah, once things get going, and I like that this movie has the Advent calendar at the middle of everything here has two very simple rules that I don't know exactly how strict they are when you actually go through the actual what happens in the movie. But they're two very simple rules that leave enough wiggle room to do some really fun stuff. Which the two rules are: if you eat the first piece of candy, you have to eat all of them. You have to follow the rules until the last door opens.
Right.
And if you throw it out, then I'll kill you.
Right. So there's 3 rules. But
3 rules. I'm
yes,
sorry.
Yes.
I forgot about the follow the rules until
Yes,
the
I
last
did.
one.
I did too, actually.
But that gives you a lot of latitude to do some fun stuff.
Right.
And I remember I was not expecting this to get as kind of psychedelic as it gets, for lack of a better term.
There's a hint towards the beginning when Sophie first shows up with the Advent calendar for Eva's birthday. And as she's opening the first couple doors, you cuts to that weird, like,
Monster Man.
Yeah, like in the kind of purple and pink lighting.
In the place Dale Cooper was in the Twin Peaks: The Return.
Yes. So there's hints that you're gonna see some weird shit, but it kind of like you get that, and then she gets the one where it's her dad who has Alzheimer's and has forgotten her and can't really communicate anymore, calls her on her birthday.
Yeah.
So you're like, okay, this is some weird stuff, but it starts off relatively tame.
Yeah. And what I really like about it too is that talking about the agency that Ava has, she is very clever about how she approaches this. And there's never a time where I found myself thinking she's making a really dumb decision, like a dumb movie decision.
Yeah.
And also and she doesn't play it completely straight. So she's doing what she's supposed to do within the rules, but she's kind of pushing the boundaries.
Yes.
So like the first one, the mint that reminds her of her father, she eats. And then he calls her on the phone. And so she uses her brain. And the second one, she doesn't eat it. She has him eat it.
Right.
Which makes him start talking again.
Yes.
So, and it's funny because I kept imagining wherever the purple guy is, anytime she kind of did something like him being like, I'll
You're
allow
not
it.
supposed to.
Technically okay.
Like, I do wish I knew. I wish I knew any German, because I wonder how, if you are a German speaker, that first rule is actually phrased.
Oh, interesting.
About eating the candy.
Yeah.
Like, is it if you eat the first candy, you must eat them all, or is it more of a like, if you eat the first candy, all candies must be eaten?
Oh, I see. Sure.
Because if it's, I know this is like a very English majory argument, but if you change that attributive status and kind of make it a more passive, like, well, then the candy must be eaten.
Yeah.
And then everything she does counts.
Don't poo-poo that. There have been holy wars fought over
Yeah.
the same kind of semantics.
Yeah, seriously. So, I mean, I'd be curious.
I don't know if you knew that the First and Third Crusade were both candy-based wars.
Not semantics-based wars.
But yeah, and also it's one of those things too where it's like the demon isn't really playing fair either. Like, was she supposed to eat that car? She's not gonna eat the car.
Right.
The dog eats the
Right.
car,
Or
obviously.
the doll.
Or the doll. She doesn't eat the doll.
Right. But
That
I guess
doll
it's
isn't
not
made
candy.
out of chocolate. That's true.
That's
a
the
good
thing.
point. Yeah.
It's every time it's a candy, somebody has to eat the candy.
I wish there was another demon with a very thick book of rules. Who every time she pulled one out, he was like, "Hold on,
wait.
It's okay. Yeah, she can do that.
Yeah. Subclause 17A says,
But it's a 5-yard penalty." But yeah, I think they do a great job, maybe too good a job, of setting Ava up as just really beaten down by her current status in
yes
life.
and no.
Yeah.
You know, like I really like the portrayal of Ava in this. I think it does a great job of showing how she is definitely kind of doing the minimum in her life.
Yeah.
Like she doesn't socialize. She clearly is very set in a routine. She clearly doesn't like her job. But she's still, like, she clearly has figured out, I have to adhere to this rigid routine to keep myself put together.
Has it been 10 years? Is that what?
I don't remember.
I forget. I think they say it.
I
but
think
don't
they
remember.
say it too, but I don't remember. But it's been long enough that she has found the combination of things she needs to do in her life to keep herself from completely unraveling, and she is rigidly adhering to those things and very little else. But she's not a total shut-in. You know, she still goes out and does things. She goes swimming all the time.
Yep.
She goes to the park. She goes to her job. When Sophie is like, come out to dinner with me, she's like, all right, fine, I'll go. She doesn't even put up a lot of protest.
Yeah.
You know, so she's not totally cutting herself off from the world. There's still a spark of like interest and curiosity in the world and others. She is just really, really deeply guarded.
Yeah, I shouldn't say she's beaten down as much as they show how much of how little consideration she's given.
Yes.
Whether it's the boss who's mad because he had to install a ramp, which cost a bunch of money, or her friend. Her friend is a real interesting character because I think they do a great job of presenting this friend
Yes.
as a positive character.
Yes.
Who doesn't even realize how shitty they're being, or maybe she does, but she plays it off as though she doesn't. So like inviting her out to dinner, that's great. But when she gets to the bar in her wheelchair, she becomes a burden because everybody now has to move and all this kind of stuff. And the friend doesn't seem to even consider that. Not to mention the fact that she then steals her boyfriend or steals the guy that she's, I don't know.
Yeah, it's a really, I really enjoy it too. I really like the way that they kind of, the movie gives you a bunch of different examples of like archetypal ways people react to someone like Ava, where you get the guy at the very beginning who I made the shallow end of the pool joke about, where when he sees her swimming, she just looks like a beautiful woman. And so he goes to try and flirt with her, and she kind of aggressively shuts him down just by being like, can you get my wheelchair? And making him realize that she's not able-bodied.
Yeah.
And then she sort of sarcastically puts him off as very much like, well, so what were you saying?
Yeah.
Do you want to say it now? And he's a little stunned, and like, he doesn't know how to handle her once he realizes her situation. And so he kind of fucks up just by not saying anything. Like he just, you know, he doesn't deal with it. He's not a total douchebag about it, but he doesn't know how to deal with it. And so she's like, I'm not educating you about this. I'm out of here.
He missed a chance to be really to win some solid points.
to be very suave in a way by being like not fazed by this.
Yeah. Instead of just freezing, instead of being like, oh no, it's just I only have 4 wheels in this chair. I usually go with a 6 or something like that.
Right. Does this have all-wheel drive?
Yes.
Yeah. But then you get to see then Sophie, her friend, who is treating her like aggressively normal. And like you just pointed out,
normal,
exactly, with it to the point of it being inconsiderate.
Which is, to go into real life, something that people do. Yeah. Because, I mean, you know, many times, I know I've probably done this, if people in your life have an issue, a lot of times you can think, well, the best thing I can do is pretend that they don't have an issue. Right. And just treat them like I would normally treat them. Right. Which is fine until you're in a situation where you actively can't do that.
Right. And it kind of depends on the intent behind it. Like, is the question, and I want to talk about Sophie at length, like a little bit later. But the question with Sophie is she behaving that way for Eva's sake, or is she behaving that way for her own sake?
Sure.
Like, she acting like everything is normal because she wants Ava to feel better, or is she doing it for herself?
Yeah.
And then you get the people who sort of like either completely are really awful, like the boss, or fetishize her, like the stock trader who assaults her in the car.
Yeah.
He sees her disability as like something that makes her more into like an object than a woman.
He doesn't even understand what what it is, because he's assaulting her, and then when she wakes up and freaks out, he's like, "Oh, I thought you were just into it."
Yeah. But when she says, I didn't react because I can't feel it. He doesn't like freak out or anything. He doubles down. He's like, "You've made me so hot."
Yeah,
like he's really into that idea. So there is a weird level of like sexualizing her for her disability baked into that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like he likes that he can take advantage of her without her knowing it.
Yeah.
So yeah, this movie like very quickly gives you all of these different ways in which people are either intentionally or accidentally shitty in kind of a hostile situation every time she leaves her house and has to deal with somebody. She's up against the probability that she's going to get one of this crappy spectrum of treatment, and the one person who seems to treat her both like she is a normal human but also has like a logical brain in his head is William, who is like, yeah, okay, you need a ride home, whatever.
But he's also been love poisoned, so
he has been love poisoned, but I don't think that changes his whole personality.
Maybe it does.
Maybe it does.
Who's to say?
Who knows?
Yeah, and I found it very interesting that Ava goes through the effort of trying not to be a hindrance, even to the point where she doesn't tell her friend that the guy that she sent her home with assaulted her.
Yeah. Yeah, and it really, I think that also shows like that despite when you first see the first scene with Sophie and Eva, you get the vibe that like she's a great friend. It's like she's shown up on her birthday, she's brought her a gift, she's there to hang out, she treats her like normal, she's super supportive, she's all like, no, you should go out, like you're gonna call that guy, like do this. And then like this movie kind of slowly turns that on its head the longer you go. Yeah. And I think that like her not telling Sophie about the assault, it reveals a lot about their friendship. Yeah. Because it's like she won't talk about the accident with her either. And then when she seems to sort of be actually settling in and opening up at that dinner, because she likes the hunter, I forget his name. And there's like obviously she's kind of into him, and Sophie is just like, yeah, no, he's a hunk. I'll be right back, and then runs off to make a date with him. Yeah. And then tells her like, oh yeah, no, he wants to go out with me. It's like, oh, okay. So Sophie is that selfish. Yeah. She's very self-centered.
There was a couple things, a couple of the things that they do at the front here where I was not that this needs to be a realistic movie, but there's a few things that I thought were maybe a little bit too far. Like having Sophie do that seems like that's an aggressively shitty thing to do. Yeah. It seems like a lot. And I mean, her getting assaulted is obviously pretty intense. Yeah. But it was just some of those things where I'm like, okay, I get, especially when you see where Sophie goes throughout the movie, I get what they're doing, but is that too much at the start for her to just like be so inconsiderate?
I don't know. I think maybe it's like a very on the nose way of conveying the ways in which people with disabilities are sometimes like desexualized. Sure. Like the assumption is that like, oh, but I mean, you can't feel anything down there. So like, obviously you're not interested in romance and sex anymore. Yeah. Yeah. And so, yeah, I'm not gonna, when I see you, oh, you say, oh, he's nice. Maybe I think you're being a good wingman for me and telling me like, yeah, he's nice. You should go for it. Yeah. I think part of it is though, just to really hammer home early on there that Sophie is not the excellent friend that she seems to be on the surface, that she's really not thoughtful about Ava in any deeper way. Like she even says she stole the calendar. Yes. She didn't even buy her a gift. She just stole it.
Yeah. And she stole her quite the gift.
Yes.
It's a beautiful antique, handmade.
I want one of these in my house.
If this was an A24 movie,
yes,
you would be able to buy them on their website for like $700.
I was going to say it would be $500, but yeah.
It's a very nicely designed, handcrafted advent calendar that also doubles as a very normal German alarm clock.
Yes.
And
goes off every night at midnight.
Yep. Is kind of is a little Babadookian.
Yeah,
to it
you got a little pop-up priest guy who comes out the top.
Which I think is the calendar itself is a good prop or good like gimmick. But when that thing pops out of the top, I was like, oh, there it is.
Yep.
That's what you need.
Is it different in different scenes?
It's different at least once. There's one point where it pops up, and I think it has the face of the monster.
I think so.
I don't know if it's different other than that. It looks to be some sort of like priest.
I think it is the monster. It's just, maybe the monster pre-monstering.
Sure.
And then the monster post-monstering.
Yeah. Before he takes his shirt off.
Before he puts his mask on.
Before he gets ready for work. Yeah. It's a great device. It looks great.
Yeah.
I actually think this movie in general looks really good.
It does. It's like a beautifully shot movie.
Yeah. I don't know. I tried to look up a little bit about this. I couldn't find much information on it. But yeah, whatever work the director did on those 2 short films, he learned how to put a team together, and they made a really nice looking movie.
Yeah. Acting in this is really good too.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's tough watching foreign films because I do think subtitles do a lot of work where you probably knock it down a point if you actually can understand what they're saying. At least that's how I've always felt.
Yeah.
But generally I do think it's it's difficult for me to say like that guy speaking French is acting bad, is a bad actor.
Yeah. I was thinking more of like, I think there's a lot of integrity of the characters.
Sure. Yeah.
Like they all have their clear personalities and they don't ever swing wildly out of character. Yeah. Like Ava never really like has a full breakdown and cry and sob moment. She's never like, oh, someone save me. Like she has gone through so much already in her life that like as everything with the calendar ramps up and gets more intense and darker and starts to kind of spiral, she doubles down and turns inward more and more.
Yeah.
And disconnects more and more from the world around her, which I feel like is a logical progression for that character rather than panic attacks and screaming.
Yeah, I really like how even when she eventually tells someone about what's going on, she doesn't freak out about it. Right. And like when she tells William about it, it's more because she's like, I need you to be here and just tell me what happens.
Yeah. Yes.
It's like, it's not like I need your help.
Yeah, she's like, I need a spotter.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
I was like, I walked here, which is weird, and I'm probably gonna walk again.
Weird. Just speaking as a paralyzed person, it was weird.
It's been a minute since I've done that. But yeah, would you eat the candy if you were presented with this and it had all those rules built into it before that first box opened?
I don't know. In the real world, yeah, you would just laugh at the rules and be like, oh, that's a cute gimmick of this old thing. The only reason I wouldn't eat the candy is that advent calendar looks old as shit. Yeah. And if there's still candy locked in that thing, it's going to be like 50 to 70 years old and I'm not eating.
Yeah. I can't remember. Is there a moment where Ava asks if her friend put the candy in there? Because I don't remember. I think there might, because I was thinking that too. I was like, who? Yeah. She's never asked her who puts the candy in this thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's a really cool gimmick. I like that I like that the things that it gives her is tailored to her in a specific way. That is, it's not just generic. It's not all, some of them are, but it's not just generic pieces that would be the same for everybody.
Right.
It's like, it's a living document, so to speak.
Right. Like clearly whatever ich is is like in tune with her life and is tailoring this experience to her life and the people in it and her deepest desires and fears.
And you know, similar to what I was saying about the way she approaches the advent calendar, the monster, it basically kind of turns into a game because the monster starts kind of matching what she's doing by putting his own thumb on the scale when, say, towards the end, when Sophie opens the thing and there's, I guess, a Viagra in there.
The evilest boner pill.
Yeah, which, like, I mean, I guess Ava would have had to eat that, I guess, but
or it wouldn't have been that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the monster is kind of directing things as much as Ava is trying to figure out where the walls are. He's also
leading her still.
Yeah, as Roddy Piper once said, just when they think they know the answers, I change the questions.
Just fully good quotes tonight.
Yeah, well, you know, it's that time of year. So what do you think about the monster? Do you think this movie needs the monster sequence when he shows up and starts killing William and gets in her face about stuff?
Gets in her face about stuff.
She's not washing the dishes. Yeah. Not pulling her end. You think she'd be? Never mind. Get myself in trouble.
Yeah, you're gonna get yourself in a lot of trouble. You know, I don't think the monster design is the most original.
Same.
That's why I called him Pyramid Head's little brother.
Yep.
But I do think having a physical embodiment of the monster is necessary because it can do things that way that you could never attribute it to, like, oh, Ava's like, this movie's really about her losing her grip on reality and she's secretly going crazy and she drove William's car into the river. Like, no, something did that. And I like that. Like we're saying, this whole movie is sort of a battle between Ava's agency and then the circumstances.
Yeah.
Whether those circumstances are because of her accident or because of the calendar. And she's always testing and trying to work within and sometimes get beyond the restrictions of those circumstances. And I think having a physical monster there to do that, rather than just have people be able to kind of hand wave it away as like, oh, it's all in her mind. I like that. I like that there's this, like, there are two wills happening here. And in a way...
3, technically. William. Third one. He might go by Bill. I'm not sure.
But I like that tension. And I like that there's not as much emphasis on the, like, is she just crazy possibility. Like, there's definitely some of that in there. But everyone who doubts her is confronted by the monster in the end.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it does add to it because without that, I do think you fall into the trap of, is this just going to be a woman screaming at an advent calendar for 2 hours?
Yes.
Why are you torturing me like that?
And trust me, I've lived that movie. And it gets boring real fast even for me.
Licorice again?
Yeah.
Or I don't mind licorice. You know what? Every time I would get like a box of candy, Valentine's Day or something, the one that always killed me is the it's like the caramel, but it's hard as a fucking rock. Like you can't actively if you bite it, you can't bite into it unless you go. It's like unless you go real slow.
You have to suck it until it's like a sliver and it slices your tongue open.
Or you got to bite down like really slow, and then your teeth just get stuck in it. And then either way, you're having a bad day.
Yeah.
And then your father says, "Shoot me in the face."
As fathers do
sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think. I wish the monster looked different.
Yeah.
Because it is kind of a letdown. I think they could have done something a little less literal, maybe.
Yeah. I do like, though, that it has these moments of being almost gentle towards her.
Sure, yeah.
Like, I think there's something about that where it's a monster and what it's doing is monstrous, but it's not evil. Exactly. Right? Like, it's not...
Yeah.
It's sort of like it's walking this line between causing these horrible things and making her participate in causing these horrible things, but it's giving her something too.
Yeah. It's really, I mean, his whole thing is kind of, what are you willing to do to get the thing that you want more than anything?
Yeah, your heart's desire.
What's interesting too is like, I think there's something in there too that it says that it's interesting about Ava that the thing that she ultimately wants is to be able to walk, as opposed to, say, her dad doesn't have Alzheimer's anymore.
Right.
Like, that's part of the road, but that's not the number one thing she wants.
Yeah.
So, you know, there's
which I think is like realistic.
Sure.
You know, I think especially if in her case she was a ballerina.
Yeah.
So her whole life was built around what her body was able to do and what she was able to do with it. And to strip that away from her, it means she went from having passions and a career and something she was good at and being physically capable and being looked at with respect or desire. Like, you know, if you're a professional ballerina, you're considered extremely beautiful, extremely talented. There's a certain level of prestige that's going to come with that. To then be, as you know, treated as her boss treats her, and have like the new coworker Miriam say like, I just couldn't live if I was like that.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah.
That's one that people would say.
People being like, you're so
realize what they
brave.
say,
And it's like, what the fuck, dude?
Yeah.
But yeah, you know, if that's in her face 24/7 and everything in her life is now revolving around that, I get it.
I think there's also too, the thing that's kind of really fun is that the results, the monster clearly is pulling the strings on everything that's happening. And so you could even read, say, the scene where her father wakes up and talks to her.
Yeah.
There's nothing necessarily to prove that that's him talking.
Right.
As much as it is the demon being like, yeah, you know what? You're going to just kill me.
Yeah.
Like, because he's
right.
If your father were to wake up out of, being comatose, and he says, you know what, I would much rather, I mean, father probably would say this, but
that's the thing. It's such a dad thing to do.
Yeah, but like, if you're Ava and you're going to talk to your father and you know what the road that you are currently on, what theoretically is at the end of it, for him to wake up and instead say, I'm sorry, what's going on? He says, the monster talked to me. Yeah. And he said, you know what? You got to do it.
Yeah, you're going to have to sacrifice a lot of stuff, and I don't mind if some of that's me.
Yeah. Kill me if you have to. If you get to walk, that's great, baby.
Yeah.
And that's probably the best thing she could have heard to keep her going down the path.
Right.
But it doesn't seem impossible that it was honest.
Right. But yeah, it's that little bit of ambiguity in there that kind of leaves you thinking, how much of this is choice and how much of this is manipulation? The thing I find interesting with the second scene, I think it's the second scene, if not the third, where she goes to the house to kill her dad, is that she manipulates the stepmom into killing herself.
Yes.
And then when the dad is like, oh, you had to sacrifice her too, she's like, nah, it was for fun.
Yeah.
That was the moment where I was like, oh, okay, Eva's not necessarily a good person.
Yeah. That's one of the things that I found very clever about the way that she approaches this.
Yeah.
She's like, oh, I could use this as a weapon.
Right.
I know this woman well enough that whatever I give her for Christmas, she's going to trash it.
Yep.
So let's just...
And the second she does, she's going to get killed for it. Because she saw William. She saw that happen to William. He thought he was trying to save her when he dumped it in the river. Yeah. And it killed him. So she's now like, okay, I know it works.
Yes.
So, all right, I hate this bitch. Let's get rid of her.
Yeah.
I think it's really interesting that, let me ask you, do you think the final sacrifice should have been the dad or should it have been Sophie? Like narratively,
I think it makes sense that it's Sophie.
But it's the dad.
Oh, wait, what?
The dad's the last.
The dad is after Sophie?
The dad is after Sophie.
Oh, I thought the dad was before that. No, that makes sense. Yeah, I mean, I guess that tracks. I mean, that's going to be the hardest one for her to do.
Yeah.
And I mean, she doesn't sacrifice Sophie as much as Sophie kind of
does it to herself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, having to kill your father probably makes the most sense for it to be the hardest one at the end there. Yeah.
I guess I was just asking because in the context and the world of the movie, he has Alzheimer's.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to kill him.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, he's not coming back from that. In the world of this movie, the thing that she is going to get at the end of the Advent calendar, if she gets anything, is her ability to walk again.
Mm-hmm.
She's not going to roll back time for him. He's not going to make it anyway.
Right.
So does that make it at all simpler to make that choice for her, especially where he's encouraging her to do it? Versus there is that tension with Sophie where as Ava's unraveling psychologically, she starts to repeat, I don't hate you and I don't want to hurt you.
Sure.
And
yeah.
it's clearly something that, she has been repeating this in some part of her brain for years.
Yeah.
Because part of her does hate Sophie and does want to hurt her because Sophie's the reason she's like this.
Yeah.
So there's this moment where it's kind of like coming face to face with your own darkest feelings and urges.
Yes. But I think that there would be a certain catharsis built into that that you don't get from killing your father. Like there's
true.
Unless you want to say, oh, I'm freeing him from whatever. But like there's that culmination of killing Sophie is coming at the after a movie's worth of, oh, this girl kind of sucks.
Yeah.
And that might
true.
be part of why she doesn't actually do it.
Yeah.
Because whether or not she is thinking, I do want this person hurt, she's not hurting her, but she still gets sacrificed anyway.
Yeah.
And so, having to, because like at the end of the day, if you told me that in order to get my legs back, I had to kill my awful friend who was driving the car that paralyzed me.
That's true.
Wouldn't be that, I mean, I'd feel bad about it to an extent, but I'd be like, yeah, this makes sense.
Yeah.
But if it's, I think the dad is devastating because, man, that guy's great.
Yeah.
And that scene where he wakes up for the first time.
Yeah, it's very subtle.
So good.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah, he plays it very, very subtly. And
and especially I think it could come off as kind of hacky, but when he wakes up and he's like, and he knows what's going on, like he's been told by the monster. He's been filled in, Yeah. And he just very calmly is like, no, I understand what's going on and you're going to have to do it. It's just like really, really effective scene.
Well, it also taps into that fear of if you have dementia or Alzheimer's or some other sort of condition that affects your brain and your cognition, is part of you still aware inside of it? Like, because a lot of people who have those kinds of things, they have periods, even just moments of lucidity where they understand what's happening and that something is happening to them that they can't control any longer. And that's really terrifying.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So having the father do that and having him show that comprehension, that level of like understanding not only what's happening to him, but what's happening to his daughter kind of plays with that psychological fear of, well, this moment's going to wear off and he's going to go back to being trapped inside his own mind in some level. Yeah.
There's also, I have noticed in real life that there's a very cruel trick that seems to be played on you when you're dealing with a loved one who's dying. Because I have not experienced this myself. I feel like it would probably crush me when and if it does happen. But I've heard at least 4 times people I know who have a relative or something who's passed away after like a long, protracted illness or being in the hospital, comatose or whatever.
Yeah.
There's always a moment like a day before they die where they just snap out of it. And they become lucid enough to talk.
Yeah.
And I can't decide if that's like God's biggest kindness or God's biggest trick.
Yeah.
Because I think on one hand it's great because you get that final moment to talk to this person and say what you want, and like you can tell that
you're both present for that moment. Yeah.
But it also probably triggers your hope response, being like, oh, maybe they've turned the corner and this is, he's going to pull through.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's a very strange, and it's one of those things where it's like, I don't know if it's just a physiological thing that happened, but I've heard the same story multiple times. Yeah. Relatively close together. Yeah. Where it's like, this is some sort of reaction, physical or metaphysical, think about it how you want. Right. That is either a blessing or a curse, depending on how you look at it.
Yeah. No, I absolutely, that's a pretty, I think at least, well-known phenomenon, like that will happen for folks who are nearing the end of their lives. So is this also what's happening in this movie? Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Like, sure. Is Ava attributing to the candy what might be just like a physical reaction that he would have had anyway? Sure. I don't know.
Well, he does. He seems to be on
he's on
a
board
first
with
name
the demon.
basis with Ichi.
He's definitely up on the plot. But I think this movie is surprising that it pulls in all of this stuff and it gives you all these questions back. Like it introduces a lot of ambiguity about how much free will do the different characters in this have? Yeah. And when are they exercising it and when is it being overridden?
And I also like that it doesn't judge anybody.
Yeah.
So
except Boris,
yeah. But as far as Ava goes, it's not judging her decisions. Like you're not watching this going, "Oh, she's a terrible person because she did the objectively bad thing and now she's getting punished for it." Right. It's like she's making some pretty intense decisions in ways that I think are very complex from a standpoint of where motivationally,
Right. And in some cases, early on in the calendar, she doesn't really know if this is actually a cause and effect situation. So I think when she puts the little heart-shaped candy in William's mulled wine or whatever, there's a little bit of a like, what the hell? What's it going to hurt?
See, that was one where I was like, well, what happened if she ate that? Like, what is... does it... Obviously, it doesn't matter, but like it's just one of those things where she puts it in somebody else's drink. That's fine. It works the way she wants it to. Yeah. But like, what if she had eaten it like all the other pieces of candy?
But I think the whole thing is that...
Get the other goblin with the rule book to give me a ruling on the heart-shaped candy.
I think it would have changed.
Yeah, I think you're right.
I think the calendar and the creature behind it is so in tune. It knows before you do what you're going to do. Yeah. And so, again, that's that whole question of free will. If it can read you so easily that it knows what you're going to do, are any of the choices you make even really choices? It's that whole conundrum. Yeah. So I think that's, I think if she had not intended on giving it to him, it would have been some other candy that did some other thing.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. The one that I kind of didn't track so much was the black communion wafer.
Yeah.
What the fuck was up with that?
I don't know, man, but it was great.
Because she gives it to a woman in the hospital who's like
that
dying.
Scene in the hospital is like, that one is one of those scenes that scared me in a good way. Yeah. You know what I mean? Where like, so Ava's in the hospital and it's nighttime. She's laying in her bed and the curtain is drawn in that classic way all around the bed, so all you see is her on the bed and the curtain.
The curtain is drawn in the way that is only useful to show creepy shadows of the other people in the room.
Yes, but the way I really liked the way they did it in this one, where you had seen a glimpse of her roommate in the hospital, who was this very sickly, kind of strange looking woman. So it's her, but you also know there's something going on with her, and all you can see is like her feet. Yeah. And like the lower part of her legs as she's kind of twitching and pacing just outside the curtain. And it lingers for a while. Like, she doesn't just like do it and then come in through the curtain like, I have your advent calendar. She like, I don't know, just kind of like paces back and forth and seems for a minute like maybe she's going to leave, and then she comes back. And you're getting this from Ava's point of view, who is paralyzed in the bed.
Right.
So she can't go anywhere. She can't do anything about whatever this woman decides to do. And then the moment where she brings her the calendar, and I forget what she says, but yeah, when she opens up the little drawer and it's a black communion wafer and she feeds it to her, it was
turns into a ghost music video.
I guess so. It was great. I was like, I don't understand what's happening, but I love it.
Yeah, I don't know if it was like we haven't really talked about how this is a very Catholic movie, at least in the imagery being used, because the monster, while I don't know, he could be a Presbyterian, I'm not sure. There's a lot of religious imagery built into the calendar itself. Some of the things that she's taking out of it, like this communion wafer, the
baby Jesus,
the baby Jesus, which is the thing that makes her able to walk, which he famously did on Star Search, I think. And I think there's I was skimming through a video on YouTube that was pointing out this stuff specifically and how deep it runs. Apparently, if I remember correctly, the name of the company that she is getting the money from, that she's invested in, the name translates to sign from God. Nice. So like clearly this stuff is on purpose.
Yeah.
But I mean it is fun because you've got this. It's a religious, to a certain extent, it's a religious based horror movie without being like The Omen or something.
Right.
Like it's using these tropes and imagery that are very familiar with the holiday and where the holiday comes from in very clever ways.
Yeah, I also think, and this might just be my very American point of view, but
here we go.
But I think it's
you
also.
Wish there were more cheeseburgers in the movie?
No, I'm
sorry. They needed to have beignets. Okay.
I love beignets.
Yeah, so do they. I don't know. I've been there. Been there.
I was gonna say I don't know if they're really
it was
a
the first
Belgian
French
thing,
food I could
but
pick up.
I mean they're great. It's quite a rant. I feel like a lot of the religious imagery.
Not enough poutine in the movie for you.
That's poutine's more of a Canadian thing.
It is. I don't know if they eat that in Belgium.
How can you just get
all the French things I know are landlocked to this.
I like
continent.
how you are sounding much more American than I am at this point.
Yeah, it's usually how it goes.
But a lot of the trappings and imagery are like a very like European, like an old world understanding of Catholicism and Christmas, rather than a more Americanized version. Like you're not seeing lots of like she has a Christmas tree in her apartment or her house, but you're not seeing lots of like the stereotype of like a Christmas movie.
Sure.
Like if this took place in California, even though there'd be like no snow and it would be warm, this whole movie would just be slathered in Christmas lights and wreaths and guys in Santa costumes.
Yes, nary a Santa to be found.
Right, because it's much more focused on the like old world religious Christmas, where this priest monster has come to both like curse and bless
I think that's an oxymoron. I was trying to say that as inoffensively as possible. Clear that I'm joking.
What character was that?
That was my shock jock character.
But I like it, you know? Like I like that it doesn't feel like it's a Christmas movie, but it doesn't feel like a holiday movie.
Yes. That's a really good way to put it. Yeah. And you know, I think it taps into that that what's the word I'm looking for? More ritualistic side of what a holiday is.
Yes.
I wonder if that's what I think I would have liked more, is if the monster was less Resident Evil and more like Belsnickel or something. Or like more old
more
world.
pagan.
Old world
the sort of
Yuletide
folkloric
monster.
Yeah.
As opposed to just a Nine Inch Nails video guy.
Yes. Yeah, with like a leather apron.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we get to the end. Oh, what did you think about the interlude where she goes to meet the guy who had the calendar previously?
So I wanted to ask you about this because I don't know if you need it.
I don't know if you need it, but I do like it because I think they don't go out of their way to explain what's happening.
Yes.
They show you the painting. You meet the guy, you see that his family's alive and that he's blind, and you can draw your own conclusions about what that means, but you don't really get what that's about until the end.
Right.
So it's a nice extra wrinkle of things to think about as this thing's going forward.
Yeah.
But I think if you wanted to cut, you could probably cut that.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is fun though, finding the thing inside and then leaving. Yeah. I don't know why the painter didn't, write a message like she did. That explains how everything works.
Why is he dressed like Tom Waits?
Yeah, he does kind of look like Tom Waits.
He's got those little glasses.
Bram Stoker's Dracula,
it's I don't dislike it. I just feel like maybe I don't know. I'm torn because on the one hand, I think you're right. I think it sort of introduces the information you need and that Eva needs to make the leaps that she does at the end.
Yeah.
About how this all works.
Literal and figuratively.
Right. Yeah. But that sort of conclusion she comes to of I'm going to eat the last candy and everything's going to reset and this is going to be like it never happened.
That is the one moment that I don't love, that the doofus boyfriend is the one who figures that out. Where she's like, I guess it's over. And he's like, wait a minute. Yeah. I understand the rules.
Yeah, I don't love that either, but
it's fine.
Yeah,
it's fine.
But yeah, at the same time, like going to visit the artist is like tonally very different than a lot of the rest of the movie.
It is, yeah.
And it just feels a little weird to like introduce this level of like, oh wait, now we're in a backstory about the Advent calendar. It's
the one thing these movies can't get away from, which is the interlude where you have to go do research.
Yeah. Yeah, and to be fair to this movie, that's like the only one. It's really the only point.
Yeah. And also, I'd rather they do it creatively like this than
absolutely
go to the library and go through some microfilm or something.
But also, I think it's a little bit of like a setup to be like, I mean, if this does well, Advent calendar.
Yeah,
too.
Honestly, I think you
like you could keep making these movies.
Could. Yeah,
yeah, just have them be escalating levels of what are you trying to undo in your life?
Yeah,
or
there's
what do you
plenty
want?
of situations that you could put this into.
Absolutely.
It did make me very curious what the guy who shows up at the end's deal was with the baby.
Yeah, I mean, clearly he has the Advent calendar and started eating things and realized the people he loves are dying one by one and he doesn't want to kill his baby.
But what does he want though?
Not to kill his baby.
Yeah, we all want that. That's not that's not special.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that bit I it comes pretty late in the movie too. Usually I actually like the positioning of it because man, the thing so I went to see this movie called Werewolves the other day in the theaters. It's kind of fun. The special effects are surprisingly good, but the rest of the movie looks like absolute dog shit.
Okay.
Like it's just
wolf shit.
Yeah, it's just I don't know if the director of photography actually knows what movie. I don't know if he's ever watched a movie before.
Ooh.
But it's like aggressive. It's very aggressive and not very nice to look at.
Okay.
Anyway, and like the script isn't really that. I'm sorry, I'm running down this werewolves movie. If you were part of it, you did great work. But like there's this, it does that thing. It's a very it's a simple setup. So it's like The Purge, but instead of, it's The Purge with werewolves. So there's a supermoon, and the supermoon has turned like half the population of the earth into werewolves.
Sweet.
That happened like last year or 2 years ago.
Cool.
And now it's going to happen again. And people turn as werewolf fighting, gun shooting and stuff. Lots of silly science.
Cool.
But it does this thing that always bugs me because I feel like it's the mark of a kind of hacky screenplay, which is right around the midpoint. your main characters all of a sudden find a really quiet place where they can sit and talk and tell each other exposition about each other for like 5 minutes.
Yes, or explain the big plan for the next arc.
Not
of the
even
movie
not even that as much as like it's the
you
part
think
where
your backstory is tragic.
It's like the part where they sit down and they're like,
Didn't you know that Clay's entire family was eaten by werewolves last year?
You know, we've worked together for 10 years and you've never told me why you've never settled down. Well, I was married once. Like that shit.
Yeah.
And it's like, I guess this is where we give our characters some character. It always feels hacky to me. But why did I go on that rant? Oh, yeah. It's always like dead center in the middle of the movie.
Yeah.
Because they read the same screenwriting books that I read. And so this one, they kind of shift it down a little bit.
Right, because dead center of the movie, we're busy at the bottom of a river having a Night of the Hunter homage.
Yeah. And so the shift makes it a little bit more mysterious because at this point, you know, William's been killed. The dog has been killed.
Oh, poor Marvin. I think Sophie and the hunter are dead at that point too. So she's kind of run out of humans in her life.
Yeah.
And animals.
And so you get this little inkling of like what's going on, and it's done in a creepy way. I think this is a very well constructed screenplay.
Yeah. It's a well built calendar.
Yes. Yeah. But yeah, we roll into the end of it.
Yes.
I was actually surprised she waited this long to have sex with somebody. I thought when she makes out with William, I thought it was going to be like, okay, they're just going to do it on the floor of the hospital.
I think she doesn't because she can't fully feel yet.
When's that ever stopped anybody? Not the guy who drove her home, that's for sure.
Yeah, I also feel like she's hit a point of like not giving a fuck.
Yeah.
At that point where she's just like, fine, hot pool guy, you're with me.
Yeah.
Like there's no one else around that I care about anymore. They're all dead. So you'll do. Get over here.
You know, it's at that point though. So let's say you're in that position and you're at that point in your calendar story.
The month?
Yeah. You know, the calendar story. And you understand how it works, right? You know that at this point when the clock strikes 12, everything's going to get reversed.
Yeah.
You probably don't really mind everything you've done at that point.
Yeah.
Which is why it is brilliant.
Yes.
That the end of this movie presents her with a choice.
Yes.
Where if she eats the last thing, everything goes back to normal. But if she doesn't, she gets to keep her legs.
Yep.
And everybody stays dead.
Yep.
And it is a great question.
Not only does she get to keep her legs, but she's rich now.
That's true.
Because the trading app from the scumbag has been making her money this whole time. She's got something like 400,000 euro at that point.
Yeah. And you, what was I saying? Sorry, I lost my train of thought.
I interrupted you. It's my fault.
She
gets to keep her legs.
She gets to keep her legs. My mind went completely blank. I'm sorry.
The choice at the end.
Yes. I'm just going to repeat the things you say to me until it comes back. It's such a clever way to keep upping the morally ambiguous ante.
Yes.
Because the whole movie you kind of I think in the back of your head you're going like, what would I do here? Like what if I was how far would you go?
Right.
And then you get to the end and you get the ultimate question. And it's a question that if they answered it in the movie, it would be a letdown.
Yes.
No matter which way they went.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because if she goes back to normal, she goes back to being paralyzed, which we need to normalize going back to being paralyzed. Then the whole movie feels like a cop-out.
Right. It almost becomes the "it was all a dream" excuse.
It's like it's like It's a Wonderful Life, where at the end Clarence is like, you could go back or you could stay like this and your whole family could be dead, but you'll have what you want.
Yeah.
You'll get the $8,000 back. So if everything goes back to the way it was, the whole thing feels like a cop-out. But if it doesn't, and she doesn't eat the thing, she seems like a pretty rough customer.
Right.
Like that's.
But at the same time, like the whole movie has gone to great lengths to show how every long-term relationship in her life at that point is damaged or poisoned somehow.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So she has Sophie, but Sophie's kind of the reason she's like this.
Yeah.
So even if you're trying to be a good person and forgive, a part of you is always going to look at that person and say, you were driving, you were distracted,
Yeah.
you walked away totally fine to live your life, and I'm like this.
Mm.
And she has her dad, but she's losing him. She's not. She has him, but she doesn't really anymore. He's gone now. So the whole movie has gone to great lengths to show all of the chinks in her whole life, in all of her relationships. The most positive relationship she has is with William, and like we pointed out earlier, who's to say that's really at all genuine?
Yeah.
So like, how much does she have? If you start looking at it in this really cold, calculating way, you can kind of be like, well, I mean, if I undo it all, and like Sophie did say to me, if I eat this candy and it kills her, but it gives me my legs back, I should do it.
Yeah.
So
I think it's clever that they put in some people who get killed that are really just sort of collateral damage.
Yep.
Because otherwise you can look at it and she can go, yeah, well, do I really feel bad those people are dead?
Right, like the boss and Miriam.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably not. But if you throw in William and
Poor Marvin.
Jesus Dick, whatever his name is.
I think she probably didn't have a lot of fond feeling for him.
Yeah, but you don't want to kill him, though. I mean, you probably
and I don't think she wanted to kill Sophie either.
True.
I think she maybe wanted to hurt her on some level. And, like, I want you to feel what I've been feeling.
Mm-hmm.
But I believe that Ava did not want to kill her. I think that's why she made the choice and said, you hold on to this candy, keep it safe, because I don't want you to die.
Yeah.
But leaving the end, putting it back in her hands entirely is a really brutal and clever way to do it.
Yeah.
Of like, no, it's really up to you now.
Yeah.
All the rules are over. All the bets are off.
Yeah.
Now you have to make the choice. It's not just, well, I started this and it says I have to finish it.
Right. Yes.
Because that's how she's getting through it. I think at a point is she's saying to herself, I have to, like it said, if I eat one, we have to eat them all.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to just keep going until the end of this thing. And then she meets the painter and thinks, oh, okay, I understand now. You finish the cycle and you go back to the beginning. And everyone who's dead is undead.
Yeah.
They're alive again.
Yeah, I think a lesser movie, too, might fall into the trap of, like Monster Man. The calendar Monster Man shows up and is like, you must finish calendar.
Yeah.
What was there? I worked really hard on this.
That candy's the best one in the whole thing.
And she's like, no, my family is worth more than my wife.
Yeah. She has some big hero speech at the end about how, she'd rather live with her paralysis than live being the kind of person who'd X, Y, and Z.
I think that would work a little bit if the whole movie was about how she didn't have any agency, but that's not the thing. It's like the whole thing is
right.
This is except for the fact that if you don't finish the puzzle, I'm going to kill you.
Yeah.
Okay. But aside from that,
every
decision she makes is her own decision.
Right.
And she handles it the way that she chooses to handle it.
Right. Right.
So I guess the big question is, well, first of all, what could you let's say, could you split the difference?
Eat half the candy?
No. Well, maybe.
Keep one leg?
Half the people come back to life?
Yeah. If you get to pick.
No, what do you have to eat it? So they establish in the movie that you can go a couple days without eating it as long as it does eventually get eaten, right? And also at the 24 mark, when the last door opens, you don't have to follow the rules anymore at all, right? So could you just tuck it into your wallet and go enjoy being a rich walkie guy?
Is that what they're called?
Yeah. It's a technical term.
Yeah.
for, I don't know, 6 months, a year, who knows?
Yeah.
And then go,
50 years.
You know what?
Yeah.
I don't, walking is so tiring. And then you just,
Or I'm 75 now and I would like an opportunity to live my life again.
yeah, who knows? I don't know.
I'll be a paraplegic,
Get
but I mean
the
I'll
goblin.
be not 75, so
Get the goblin with the book.
yeah.
need a
That
ruling.
is the difficult thing about movies like this.
Yeah.
Is when you introduce this set of rules, it just opens up all of these little, like, we can all just be jerks on the internet.
Yeah,
and
that's
nitpick at them. And,
that's the thing. Like, you can be shitty about this all day, but
yeah.
that doesn't affect any movie or story that tries to address that stuff. It always feels overwritten and hackneyed.
Yes, and then you're going too deep into like esoteric lore about something.
Unless the goblin with the rule book was part of the story.
I like that you've made this a character.
He's got the little
movie.
Tom Waits glasses.
He's got one of those visors that like
Yeah,
old-timey accountants
he's dressed
wear.
like an accountant from the 30s. Yeah. But do you think she eats it, or do you think she doesn't?
I think she doesn't.
You think she doesn't eat it?
Yeah, I think she doesn't.
So if she doesn't eat it,
Mm-hmm.
how does that other guy get the calendar? Because
her hot jerk boyfriend threw it off the roof.
so
Someone else just finds it. I think the calendar has its ways.
calendar is immortal.
Yeah, absolutely. That the evil stepmom threw it in a fire.
That's true.
And it
but
was
but I
fine.
didn't know if it was one of those
Other
things
dudes
where
threw it in a river and just like got out of it and carried it back to the shore.
If
and
ever
then,
there
like,
was a well-named villain.
Yeah.
But I didn't know if it was like, once the last day rolls around, all bets are off and you could destroy it. But I guess
Nah, man.
nothing says that's not in the rule book.
No, I think the calendar just continues on.
Yeah.
I think that's how it's gotten where it is at that point.
So do you think at the end, when the guy shows up to her house,
Mm-hmm.
it's abandoned?
Maybe.
Do you like that final scene?
When the guy with his baby shows up at the house
Yeah.
and the door just kind of creaks open. Yeah,
Yeah.
I do actually. I like it a lot because it adds to the ambiguity. Like,
Yeah.
you're sort of back where the movie started in a way, but you don't know anything. Like, that door just opens and it's dark in there. He doesn't look up or down. You can't tell if somebody opened the door, is he meeting their eyes on like standing height, or is he looking down at someone in a chair?
Yeah.
You can't tell. You get no answer.
What if it turned out that the thing he really wanted was a full set of unopened original 1977 Star Wars action figures?
Then my suggestion to him would be, when you get to day 24, eat the candy. Go back and unkill your
I
baby.
don't know. Mint condition Wookiee.
You can fix that just by being better at eBay.
You could be a star on the convention circuit.
What a sad aspiration.
Childless star on the convention circuit. Anyway, yeah. What are your final thoughts on Advent Calendar? Do you think that it deserves to be on the list?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
It's a really well done movie.
Mm-hmm.
It tries some interesting stuff. It's beautifully done. It feels very polished, especially for somebody's first film. I enjoyed it, but I don't know. It just doesn't have best horror movies of all time.
Yeah.
On my list, at least.
I think the representation of Christmas horror movies on this list is absolutely insane. Because as we've gone over many times,
Yes.
Black Christmas is nary to be found. Yet we have Better Watch Out on here.
What?
We covered that like 3 years ago.
Yeah, I know. I remember.
Yeah.
I just didn't think it was on the list. I thought it was
At
like
the
this.
time it was. I don't know if it is anymore,
Okay.
but at the time it
I was
was.
going to say, I thought it was more like this one where we just wanted to do something seasonally appropriate.
I'm 90% sure. Oh, let me look real quick here.
While you're doing that, I will say I do appreciate this
it was
movie.
number 133.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's still on here? Sorry, continue.
I do appreciate this movie's representation of Ava,
Yep.
of like a disabled woman who is not a long-suffering martyr or saint.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah.
Like she's tough and she's obviously like been through a lot, but she's not perfect.
Yeah.
and she's not this like, oh, well, your disability has made you special and better than other people, but it also hasn't made her less than.
She's
I
not
think it's a very good representation of somebody coping with a disability.
I also like that she's not imperfect in a way that just makes her an asshole.
Right.
Because that's a very common way to do that.
Like, she's a little prickly sometimes, but it generally tends to be only when someone's acting fucking weird about about her situation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Better Watch Out is still on the list. It's number 181.
Wow.
We also covered what was the one with the giant Santa Claus?
Was it Rare Exports?
Rare Exports,
Yes.
which was fine.
Yeah.
I think I would switch Better Watch Out with this in a heartbeat.
Yeah. Now that you've said Better Watch Out is on this list, I'm like, oh yeah. Put this honestly,
put
Advent Calendar.
Probably Rare Exports too.
Yeah.
I would. Let's put it this way. I would in a second remove those two and add on this and Black Christmas.
100%.
But in the general concept of greatest horror movies of all time, I don't really know if this makes the list. It's very good.
Yes.
Was it one of the 200 best of all time? Probably not.
Right. It is refreshing, though, that it is not a meditation on grief.
That's true.
You know?
I mean, to an extent, I guess it kind of is, but
it's...
but not as much as...
really.
Yeah, there's not real... Let's put it this way. There's not a lot of metaphor here in the sense where it's like the monster doesn't represent her. It's just a fucking monster.
Maybe she's dealing with some PTSD, but that's because she was hit by a car.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
But yeah, Advent Calendar. Check it out. If it's on Shudder and you have Shudder, watch it there. If
Definitely
not, I would say
worth a December watch.
Yeah, I would say it's worth renting for a couple bucks if you're looking for something to watch.
Yeah.
So we are coming into the end of our Halloween series on Patreon.
Somehow.
And next year, well, in our final episode, we will be announcing what we're doing next year. But I think I know what it's going to be already. And with that comes a bit of a caveat as to how we're going to handle things going forward. So I'm not going to explain what that means until the next episode, until the Patreon episode.
Cool.
However, I will say, maybe you can parse it out, what we're doing next year. The next movie we're going to be doing on our main feed show is number 110, 1953's House of Wax, starring Vincent Price.
Yes, my man.
So we will be. There's another movie. I don't remember who has the wild card for the next grouping.
No idea.
But I'm going to use it. Sorry, because it pertains to what we're doing on Patreon. So
I think you should be vaguer.
I could. There's a concept of an idea.
Concepts of a plan.
Yes.
Yes.
So yeah, if you want to know what's going on, check out our final episode of Halloween on Patreon, and then listen to the rest of them.
Yeah, there's a lot on there now.
Yeah.
We've done several years worth of content. At this point.
Which is, I guess, great, but
I love you too, man.
You're fine. I mean, you do it. You know what? I wouldn't replace you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Merry Christmas. No, this has been very fun as long as we've been doing it. I hope we get to do it until one of us gets sick of it and just storms out.
Yeah, or one of us gets drowned at the bottom of a river.
Well, as long as I don't lose my legs, I guess. Who's to say? Hey, those Star Wars figures aren't going to buy themselves.
They're not going to buy themselves.
So, or maybe, no, they will once I get the calendar. Then I won't have to pay for it.
Yeah, they'll just be in your
Anyway,
house.
we need to leave now.
Okay.
This is our last show for the year, so everybody have happy holidays. Have a happy new year.
Yes.
We'll see you in January with House of Wax.
Bye.